Tuesday, 10 a.m. The quarterly review. I'm sitting in the back. Paul is at the front. He's presented my project, my analysis, my recommendations, my slides. He changed the font. That's all. The room doesn't know. They applaud. The VP says, "Great work, Paul." Paul says, "Thank you, I put a lot into this." I don't stand up. I don't say, "Those are my slides." I don't interrupt. I just watch. Paul looks at me once, a flicker, half a second, and looks away. He knows I know. He's counting on me staying quiet. He's counting on me being professional. He's counting on me not making a scene. He's right. I don't make a scene. I make a plan. After the meeting, Paul catches me in the hallway. He says, "You're not going to say anything, are you?" I say, "About what?" He says, "About the project, the presentation." I say, "You presented it well." His face relaxes. He thinks he's safe. He's not safe. He just doesn't know it yet. I say, "Next quarter, I'm running something new, something larger. You won't be involved." He laughs. "You can't run a project without me." I say, "Watch." I walk away. I don't look back. That was the last time I said his name out loud for a very long time. My name is David. I was 33, 5 years into a job where I learned that the difference between being valued and being used was usually just the person standing in front of the room. 6 months before the Tuesday meeting, I was given a project. Small, low visibility. The kind of project no one fights over. Paul was supposed to be my collaborator. That meant he attended meetings and took notes while I did the work. Data, analysis, strategy, the whole thing. I did not mind. I like building. I like taking something messy and making it clean. I like looking at a problem in the morning and having an answer by the end of the week. Paul liked sitting near the window and asking questions he already knew the answers to. He was 42, competent enough to survive, insecure enough to steal. That combination is more dangerous than pure incompetence. A truly incompetent person gets removed. A person who can do just enough work to stay in the room while taking credit for other people's labor. That person can last for decades. I kept Paul copied on everything. Emails, drafts, spreadsheets. Not because I trusted him, because I was following protocol. Protocol said collaborators must be included. Protocol did not say collaborators might steal your work and present it as their own. I learned that lesson the hard way. I only needed to learn it once. The project came together faster than anyone expected. 6 weeks instead of 10. The data was clean. The recommendations were practical. I built 3 scenarios with different risk levels and attached a cost analysis to each one. Richard, my manager, looked at the final deck and said, "This is solid work." He was 57, saw everything, said nothing, believed that conflict was worse than injustice. That was not a weakness in his mind. That was management. I walked out of Richard's office feeling good. Not great. Good. The kind of good that comes from finishing something and knowing it was done right. I did not think about who would present it. I did not think about credit. I thought about the next project. That was my mistake. I was building. I was not watching. My colleague Maya caught me by the coffee machine. She was 38, had been at the company for 9 years, had seen 3 versions of Paul come and go. She said, "Paul is going to present your work. I have seen him do it before." I said, "He cannot. My name is on the slides." She said, "He will change the font and call it his own. Watch." I watched. She was right. I should have listened earlier, but I listened in time to learn. That warning did not protect me. It just made the theft more painful when it happened, because I should have seen it coming, and part of me did. I just did not want to believe that someone I worked with every day would stand in front of a room and claim credit for something he did not do. That was naive. I was 33 years old. I should have known better by then. The meeting started at 10. I sat in the back near the door. Paul stood at the front with the clicker. My clicker. The slide went up, and I started counting. 17 slides total. 14 of them were mine. The other 3 were his. Introductory filler. A conclusion that misstated my recommendations. He changed the fonts and called it a day. The room did not notice. Why would they? The numbers were right. The analysis was sound. The recommendations were practical. Paul stood there and read my words off the screen, and everyone nodded. The senior director from operations asked a question about implementation. Paul answered it using the exact language from my notes section. The VP of finance asked about the risk assessment. Paul flipped to the third scenario and said, "This is the conservative path, which I recommend." I did not recommend the conservative path. I recommended the aggressive path with mitigation steps. He did not understand the work well enough to present it accurately. But no one asked follow-ups. No one probed. No one cared. They just wanted the meeting to end so they could get to lunch. They applauded when he finished. The VP shook his hand. Richard looked at the floor. My manager, 57 years old, saw everything, said nothing. He knew. He had always known. He had seen Paul do this before. To other people. To people who left. To people who stayed and swallowed their anger. I was supposed to swallow mine. I sat in my chair and I had a conversation with myself. Not out loud. In my head, I said you can be angry, or you could be strategic. Angry feels better now. Strategic feels better later. Choose later. I chose later. I did not confront Paul. I did not go to HR. I did not send an email to the VP with timestamps and file properties. I just sat in the back of the room while people packed their bags and shuffled toward the door. And I started planning. Not revenge. Revenge is emotional. Revenge feels good for about 10 minutes, and then you are still stuck with the same problem. I planned success. Success is undeniable. Success does not need to be stolen. It just needs to be built. And no one can take credit for something they did not know existed until it was already done. The hallway outside the elevator bank was half empty. Paul caught me near the water fountain. He said, "You're not going to say anything, are you?" I said, "About what?" He said, "About the project. The presentation." I said, "You presented it well." His face relaxed. He thought I was letting it go. He thought I was weak. He thought I was a pushover. He thought wrong. He just did not know it yet. I said, "Next quarter I am running something new. Something larger. You will not be involved." He laughed. He actually laughed. He said, "You cannot run a project without me." I said, "Watch." Then I walked to the elevator. I did not explain. I did not threaten. I did not list the reasons he was wrong. I just walked. The doors closed. That was the last time I spoke to him for 3 months. He spent those 3 months thinking he had won. I spent those 3 months building. I started building the next project the same day. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. I needed something that was undeniably mine. Something Paul could not steal because he would not know it existed. I did not tell my manager. I did not tell my team. I told one person. Marcus was a junior analyst. 26 years old. Sharp. Overlooked. He sat in the corner cubicle near the printer. No one talked to him. No one asked his opinion. No one even remembered his name half the time. He had been at the company for 14 months, and I was not sure anyone in leadership could pick him out of lineup. That was not an insult. That was an advantage. I walked to his desk on a Wednesday afternoon. He was staring at a spreadsheet. I sat down in the empty chair next to him. I said, "I am building something. It needs to be invisible until it is ready. You are invisible. So am I now. Let us be invisible together." Marcus asked, "Why me?" I said, "Because no one notices you." That is not an insult. That is an advantage. Paul is not watching you. Paul is not watching anyone who is not a threat. He does not know I am a threat because I have never given him reason to be afraid. That changes now, but he will not know it is changing until it is too late. Marcus said Paul is going to find out. I said Paul thinks I am weak. He thinks I'm a pushover. He is not watching me. He is not watching anyone. He is too busy enjoying the applause from a project he did not build. That is his weakness. He stopped paying attention because he thinks he already won. Marcus said this feels like revenge. I looked at him. I thought about how to say this right. I said, revenge is about the past. The past is Paul stealing my work. I cannot change that. This is about the future. The future is me building something he cannot touch. That is not revenge. That is just winning. Marcus nodded. He stayed. He worked nights, weekends, early mornings. So did I. We built in secret. The way you build when no one is watching. The way you build when you have something to prove. Not to Paul, to yourself. To the part of you that sat in the back of that meeting room and swallowed glass and said choose later. We did not tell anyone. Not HR. Not my manager. Not the VP. The project grew. Slowly. Quietly. I built the framework. Marcus ran the numbers. I wrote the analysis. Marcus found the gaps. We worked in an empty conference room on the 4th floor. The one with the broken thermostat and the view of the parking garage. No one ever used that room. No one ever walked past it. It was perfect. The project was 3 times larger than the one Paul stole. More data, more analysis, more risk, more reward. The kind of project that makes a career. The kind of project you do not present until it's ready. We were not ready, but we were getting there. Every night, I stayed later. Every morning, I came in earlier. Marcus did the same. We did not talk about Paul. We did not talk about credit. We just built. The silence protected us. But I knew the silence would not last forever. Eventually, you have to be seen. I just wanted to make sure that when I was seen, I was holding something too big to ignore. 3 months passed. I attended the required meetings. I did my assigned work. I said nothing about the project. Paul did not ask. He assumed I was doing what I always did, working quietly while he collected credit. He stopped looking at me in the hallway. I was beneath his notice. That was his mistake. Richard pulled me aside on a Thursday afternoon. He closed his office door. He said, "You have been quiet." I said, "I have been working." He said, "On what?" I said, "On something. You will see it when it is ready." He leaned back in his chair. He was 57. Gray hair, gray suit, gray office. Everything about him was designed to avoid attention. He said, "I am your manager. I should know what you are working on." I looked at him. I thought about the meeting. The way he looked at the floor when the VP shook Paul's hand. The way he said nothing. The way he always said nothing. I said, "You should, but you did not ask." And when Paul presented my work, you did not say anything. You looked at the floor. So I'm working on something. And when it is ready, you will see it. Until then, I am not talking about it. Richard said, "That is not how this works." I said, "How does it work, Richard?" Someone steals my work. You say nothing. I am supposed to keep doing my job like nothing happened. I'm doing my job. I'm just not doing it in public anymore. Not until I am ready. He said, "You are being dramatic." I said, "I am being strategic." There is a difference. Drama is for attention. Strategy is for results. You will see the results soon. That is all you need to know. He did not push. He did not apologize. He just looked at his computer screen and said, "Close the door on your way out." I closed it. I walked back to my desk. That was fine. I did not need his apology. I needed his absence. And I had it. Marcus and I worked. Nights. Weekends. The project took shape. It was larger than anything I had done before. Larger than anything Paul had ever touched. It was mine. It was ours. And no one knew it existed. Then Paul found out. Not the details. Just that something was happening. He saw Marcus and me leaving together late on a Tuesday night. 11:30. The parking garage was empty. Paul was still there because Paul was always there. Not working, just present. He had a thing about being the last one to leave. He thought it made him look dedicated. He saw us walking toward my car. He said, "What are you two working on?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "You are lying." I said, "I am not lying. I'm just not telling you. There is a difference." He stepped closer. He said, "You are still angry about the presentation." I said, "I am not angry. I am just done including you. Those are different things." He said, "You cannot run a project without me." I said, "I already am." I opened my car door. Marcus got in the passenger seat. I got in the driver's seat. Paul stood there in the parking garage with his hands in his pockets. I started the engine. I pulled out of the space. I did not look at him, but I saw his face in the rearview mirror. He was scared, not of me, of being irrelevant. He had spent his whole career being relevant by proximity, being close to people who did work, being the one who presented, being the one who got credit. He had never built anything himself, and he knew, in that moment, that I was building something he could not attach himself to. That was his fear, not my problem, but I watched it settle on his face anyway. The realization that the room was moving on without him, and the desperate question underneath it. What do you do when you were never the engine? Just the voice that announced the engine was working. And then the engine stopped telling you when it was about to start. The project was ready. 12 weeks of nights and weekends. 12 weeks of the empty conference room with the broken thermostat. 12 weeks of Marcus running numbers while I built frameworks. It was done. I scheduled the presentation. Not with Richard, with the VP directly. I sent an email on a Friday afternoon. Short. No small talk. I have a project to present. It is larger than anything we have done this year. I would like to present it to you and your team. No other attendees. The VP replied within an hour. He was curious. He had noticed my absence from the quarterly reviews. He had noticed my silence. He did not know what I had been doing. That was the point. He wrote back. Why just me and my team? No other attendees. I wrote, because I want to present the work, not manage the politics. The people who need to see it are the people who make decisions. That is you and your team. Everyone else can see it when it is implemented. He wrote, that is unusual. I wrote, so is the project. Unusual work deserves an unusual presentation. He wrote, Tuesday at 10 a.m. My conference room. I wrote, I will be there. I did not invite Richard. I did not invite Paul. I did not invite anyone who had watched Paul steal my work and said nothing. They could read about the project later, in the company newsletter. After it was already successful, Paul heard about the meeting within 24 hours. The office was small enough that news traveled. Someone in finance overheard the VP mention it. Someone told someone who told Paul. He came to my desk on Monday morning. He did not sit down. He stood over me. He said, I heard you were presenting to the VP. I said yes. He said, I am not invited. I said no. He said, that is not fair. I looked up at him. I had been waiting for this conversation for 12 weeks. Not because I wanted it, because I knew it was coming. I said, fair is me presenting my own work. You took that from me. You do not get to complain about fairness now. He said, I will go to Richard. I said, go. Tell him you're not invited to a meeting about a project you did not work on. Tell him you're upset that the person whose work you stole is presenting something without you. Tell him all of that, and then watch him explain why you should be included. Paul stood there. His hands were in his pockets. His jaw was tight. He did not go to Richard. He knew I was right. He had no standing. He had no claim. He had nothing except the memory of a Tuesday morning when he stood in front of a room and claimed credit for something he did not do. That memory was not a ticket into my meeting. It was the reason I locked the door. He said, you are making an enemy. I said, I am not making anything. You did this. You stole from me. You assumed I would stay quiet. You assumed I would swallow it. You assumed wrong. Now I'm presenting my work. You are not invited. That is not me making an enemy. That is me remembering who you are. He did not say anything else. He turned around and walked back to his desk. I watched him go. 12 weeks earlier, he had stood in that hallway and laughed when I said I was running something larger. He was not laughing now. He was not scared either. He was something worse. He was irrelevant, and he knew it. He just did not know how to say it out loud. Tuesday, 10 a.m. The VP's conference room had glass walls. I could see the hallway from where I was standing. Marcus was next to me. He was nervous. His hands were shaking slightly against the clicker. I was not nervous. I had been preparing for this for 3 months. Not the presentation, the moment. The VP sat at the head of the table. His team was on either side. 7 people. Directors. Senior directors. The people who decided where money went and who got to spend it. I had never presented to all of them at once. That was by design. I started. The first slide went up. The data, the analysis, the strategy, the scale. I walked them through it piece by piece. No filler, no fluff, just the work. Marcus handled the numbers. He spoke clearly, confidently. The VP's team nodded. They asked questions. We answered. They asked more questions. We answered those too. Then the VP said, "How long have you been working on this?" I said, 3 months. Quietly. He said, "Why quietly?" I looked at him. He was 53. Sharp. Direct. The kind of executive who did not have time for office politics, but understood them better than anyone. I said, "Because I wanted to build it before anyone could take it. My last project was presented by someone else. That will not happen again." The VP looked at me. He knew about Paul. Everyone knew. No one said anything. Until now. He said, "That will not happen again." Not a question. A promise. I said, "Thank you." Then I continued the presentation. I did not look at the hallway, but I knew Paul was there. I could feel him watching through the glass. He was standing near the water fountain. His arms were crossed. He was not invited. He came anyway, to watch, to see what he was missing. I did not acknowledge him. I did not slow down. I did not speed up. I just kept presenting. The work was the answer. The work was always the answer. The VP approved the project at 10:43. Full resources. Full support. My name on every document. Marcus's name as co-lead. No Paul. No Richard. Just the people who built it and the people who believed in them. The VP shook my hand. He said, "This is the kind of work we need more of." I said, "I have more where this came from." He smiled. Marcus smiled. I did not smile. I just nodded. The meeting ended. People stood up. Chairs pushed back. The VP's team filed out. Marcus and I packed our things. I looked at the hallway. Paul was gone. He had watched as long as he could stand it, and then he walked away. I did not know where he went. I did not care. He was not part of this. He was not part of anything that mattered anymore. I'm over at where silence ends. Subscribe if any of this sounds familiar. Marcus and I walked to the elevator. He said, "That went better than I expected." I said, "It went exactly how I expected." He said, "You are not happy." I said, "I am not happy. I am satisfied. Happiness is for things you did not have to fight for. This I fought for. Satisfaction is better. Satisfaction lasts longer." The doors opened. We got in. The doors closed. I thought about Paul standing in the hallway, watching, wanting, having no claim. That was not revenge. That was consequence. He stole something and assumed there would be no cost. The cost was watching someone else walk into a room he could not enter. The cost was knowing the door was locked, and he did not have the key. The cost was irrelevance, and he had to pay it himself. I did not charge him anything. I just built something he could not touch. That was all I ever needed to do. The meeting ended. The VP shook my hand, then Marcus's hand. He said, "I want weekly updates." I said, "You will have them." We walked out of the conference room. Paul was still in the hallway, leaning against the wall, trying to look casual. He was not casual. He was desperate. He pushed off the wall as we walked past. He said, "Congratulations." I said, "Thank you." He said, "I could have helped." I stopped walking. Marcus kept going. He knew to give me space. Paul stood there with his hands in his pockets. The same posture from 3 months ago. The same hallway. The same 2 people. Everything had changed. Nothing had changed. I said, "You did not want to help. You wanted to present. Those are different things." He said, "You are still angry." I said, "I am not angry. I'm just done." There's a difference. Anger is emotion. Done is a decision. He said, "What does that mean?" I said, "It means I am not going to work with you. Not now. Not ever. You stole from me. You presented my work as your own. You looked at me in this hallway and asked if I was going to say anything. You knew what you did, and you did it anyway. I am not angry about that. I just learned from it. And what I learned is that you cannot be trusted. And I do not work with people I cannot trust." He said, "You are being harsh." I said, "I am being honest." Harsh would be going to HR. Harsh would be sending an email to the VP detailing what you did. I did not do that. I just built something you cannot touch. That is not harsh. That is just success. He did not answer. He stood there for a moment. Then he walked away. He had not looked back. Neither did I. Marcus was waiting by the elevator. I walked toward him. Then Richard appeared from his office. He said, "Do you have a minute?" I said, "I have 30 seconds. He said, "I should have said something. In the meeting, when Paul presented your work." I said, "Yes, you should have." He said, "I am sorry." I said, "Thank you." He said, "Can we move past this?" I looked at him. 57 years old. Gray hair. Gray suit. Gray office. A man who had built an entire career on not making waves. On looking at the floor when something unfair happened. On hoping conflict would resolve itself without his involvement. He was not a bad person. He was just absent. And absence, when you need someone to stand next to you, feels exactly like betrayal. I said, "I have moved past it. I have moved past you. The project does not need you. I do not need you. You are my manager on paper, but you are not my leader. There is a difference." He did not argue. He could not. He had looked at the floor when I needed him to stand up, and now I was standing without him. He said, "I understand." I did not know if he actually understood. It did not matter. Understanding does not undo the moment when someone decides not to help. The apology was fine. It was even sincere. But sincerity does not get you back on a train you already missed. The train was moving. I was on it. Richard was standing on the platform. That was his choice. He made it 3 months ago. He just did not know it yet. The project launched 6 weeks after the presentation. The rollout was smooth. The results came in faster than anyone expected. Revenue up. Cost down. The VP sent a company-wide email. My name was on it. Marcus's name was on it. Paul's name was nowhere. He was not fired. He was not punished. He was just irrelevant. That was worse than punishment. Punishment would have meant someone cared enough to act. Irrelevance meant no one was thinking about him at all. I saw him in the hallway a few times after the launch. He looked smaller. Not physically, just present. He stopped saying hello. He stopped making eye contact. He walked with his head down like a man who had realized the room had moved on without him, and he did not know how to catch up. Then he stopped coming to the office. Worked from home for a few weeks. Transferred to another department. Then he left the company. I heard he is doing something else now. Something smaller. Something that does not require collaboration. That is fine. That is where he belongs. Alone with the work he cannot steal because no one else is doing it for him. Marcus and I were having coffee one morning. The project was running smoothly. We were already talking about the next one. He said, "Do you think Paul learned anything?" I said, "I do not know. I do not care. Learning is his responsibility. Mine was building. I built. He did not. That is the whole story." He said, "You're not angry anymore." I said, "I was not angry. I was focused. Anger is for things you cannot change. I could change this. I did." He said, "You are different than I thought." I said, "How?" He said, "I thought you were quiet because you were weak. You're not weak. You're just strategic. You do not waste energy on people who do not matter." I said, "Thank you. That is the best compliment I have ever received." I meant it. Most people confuse silence with passivity. They think if you're not shouting, you're not paying attention. The opposite is usually true. The people who shout the loudest are often the ones who have the least to say. The quiet ones are watching, learning, waiting. And when they move exactly once. The promotion came on a Thursday. The VP called me into his office. Glass walls. Same conference room where I had presented the project. He did not ask me to sit down. He just said, "You build things. We need more of that. Less politics. More building." I said, "I can do that." He said, "I know. That is why you're getting the role." It was a new role. Created for me. Above Richard. Not replacing him. Just above him. A structural acknowledgement that he was not the person who could lead the kind of work I was doing. He was still there. Still managing. Still looking at the floor when things got uncomfortable. But now he reported to someone who reported to the VP. And that someone was me. I did not mention Paul. I did not mention Richard. I did not mention the Tuesday meeting where my work was stolen. Those things were in the past. The past is not a place you live. It is just a place you visit to remember why you left. I had left that hallway. I had left that meeting room. I had left the version of myself who sat in the back and swallowed glass. That person did his job. He stayed quiet when he needed to. He built when no one was watching. And then he walked into a room and showed everyone what he had made. That person was not weak. That person was just waiting. And now he was done waiting. A year after the Tuesday meeting, I am walking to a conference room. The same VP. The same glass walls. A new project, larger than the last one. My team is waiting for me. Marcus is there. New people. Good people. People who build. I pass Paul's old desk. Someone else sits there now. I do not know their name. I do not need to. The desk is not a monument. It is just furniture. The person who sat there is gone. Not because I destroyed him. Because he destroyed himself. He stole from the wrong person. Not because I am powerful. Because I am patient. Patience applied consistently beats theft every time. You can only take credit for work you understand. Paul did not understand my work. He just presented it. When I started building things he could not understand, he had nothing to steal, nothing to present, nothing to be. He did not leave because I pushed him. He left because he had nothing left to stand on. Marcus catches up to me in the hallway. He says, "Do you ever think about that meeting? The one where Paul presented your work?" I say, "Sometimes." He says, "What do you think about?" I say, "I think about how quiet I was. People thought I was weak. They thought I was a pushover. They thought I was letting it go. I was not letting it go. I was just waiting for the right moment to build something so large that the theft became irrelevant. Not forgotten, just irrelevant. There is a difference." Marcus says, "What is the difference?" I say, "Forgotten means you stop caring. Irrelevant means you built something so much larger that the old thing does not matter anymore." I did not stop caring. I just made the caring about something else. Something bigger. Something mine. Marcus nods. He understands. He was there. He helped build it. He knows the difference. I walk into the conference room. The VP is there. My team is there. Marcus is next to me. I do not look for Paul. I do not think about Paul. I think about the work. The work is the answer. The work is always the answer. I open my laptop. I click to the first slide. My name is on it. Marcus's name is on it. No one else's. That is not arrogance. That is accuracy. The people who did the work are the people who present the work. That is the rule I learned the hard way. That is the rule I will never break again. I start talking. The room listens. Am over at where silence ends. When has someone taken credit for your work, and how did you handle it?